Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus Williams. I'm here with co-host Brock Morris, and we are excited today to have Evelyn Cazier. She is the teenage author of the Cultures Chronicles series, and besides writing, she enjoys making YouTube shorts, rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and learning how to play new instruments. Evelyn's biggest dream is to publish her debut novel before she turns 18 later this year. Welcome, Evelyn. We're so happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, like always, before we jump into all of our questions and our conversation, we've got to get the true truths and a lie out there because before you start talking, we need to know what we're trying to figure out here. So I'm going to read your two truths and a lie, and then throughout the episode, we'll try to figure out which one is the lie. And we may throw in some questions there to try to trip you up or get you to give us some clues. So be wary for that. So, all right. So, number one, I played violin for a video game soundtrack. Number two, I did an epic Harry Potter marathon where I read all the books in a week, then watched all the movies the day after. And number three, Chuck Norris waved at me. So played violin for a video game, Harry Potter marathon, books and movies, and then Chuck Norris waved at you. All right, so we're going to have to try to figure out how we weave Chuck Norris into the conversation.
Now, can you give us the video game right offhand, or are you going to withhold that even?
No words in name.
No dice. Not giving us anything.
Nothing.
All right, fair enough. I
don't even know the video game, so.
You just dove right in there this time. Like you weren't
I
even.
wasn't holding back.
Yeah. So, Evelyn, as a teenage author, like how did you? I guess the biggest question for me is, at what point did you say, you know what, I can write a book?
I was actually thinking about this the other day, because I always, when people ask me, I always say like, oh, started writing in middle school, but I actually remembered when I was like 8 years old, I tried writing a book and I probably got like 3 pages into it and then I quit. And then when I was 10, I was like, I should write a book. And I tried again and I probably got 5 pages into it. But then the story I give everyone else, when I was in middle school, I'm homeschooled, so I joined this homeschool creative writing group. And we got these English assignments and I didn't really want to do them because they were boring. So the teacher gave all the students a second option, which is write a story. I didn't have a plan of where it would go or anything like that. And then 2 years later, I had a 500-page novel. So it just kind of built up from there.
So I guess just nobody ever told you you couldn't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, and maybe your experience in the homeschool group is different than someone might have in a traditional school environment, where I think we're limited a lot by teachers or other kids telling us what we can't do rather than what we can do. Do you see that in a comparison with friends who may go to a traditional school versus your homeschooling?
Yeah. I feel like also with public school is that the assignments are very specific and there's not a lot of like creative freedom as much. And so it was nice to just write what I wanted to write. And then also like homeschooling gave me a lot more free time, and my like homeschool like schedule was very flexible. And so I could do like 20 minutes of history and 3 hours of writing if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids who go to public school just don't have that amount of time, which makes it very difficult for teenagers to get novels finished and published.
And you got to focus on what you were interested in, it
Yes,
sounds like.
very much so.
So during this process, did you have someone critiquing the work as you went, getting feedback as you went, or was it just you started writing and until you got the finished product?
It was really interesting. I would just like randomly mention it to people I know, and I would have people like, "Hey, can I read it?" And so I had a lot of friends working on it and giving me like their thoughts and opinions, and I got a couple like actual beta readers who kind of knew what they were doing. My grandpa has a couple books published, so he read through it, and um, I mean, he doesn't do fictional stuff. He does like religious books, but it was very
Mhm.
helpful to have him read through it and give me some pointers. And so, yeah, I learned a lot from having beta readers and stuff.
So what was one of the biggest tips that your grandpa gave you?
Um, he just gave me so many things. I don't even remember. Um, he corrected some major plot points and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know, he just was very encouraging.
as grandpa should be. So what, is it fantasy genre? Is that
Yes, it is
okay.
fantasy.
So tell us a little bit about the story.
Okay, so it is between middle grade and YA fantasy. It's about a girl from our world named Ember who gets magically teleported to a world called Caltris. She ends up accidentally befriending a criminal, and she just wants to get home, but she ends up wound up in this rebellion, and she has these crazy magic powers, and yeah, it just kind of follows her journey through this world and trying to navigate all of this, like, I don't know, all the craziness that's going on in this world.
Mhm. So are the magic powers something that she has in this world or that kind of came to her when she was transported to the other world?
They came to her when she teleported to the other world. Yeah, it's kind of a new magic system. It's called gem wielding, where the magic user has these little crystals, and they put their magic energy into the crystal, and it uh, kind of like comes out with a power. So I use telepathy a lot, invisibility, uh, electricity, just like
Mhm.
the power, superpowers, elemental powers, honestly, anything you can think
Yeah.
of.
So were there any creating a magic system is like that's a big job. There are a lot of authors that have a very difficult time creating these new kind of systems. What was your process of making sure that you had everything straight and you remembered everything and it was all, everything worked together and all that stuff?
It was really interesting. It started out as a very vague idea. I didn't even think I would go anywhere near it, but the book started out with Ember finding this crystal, and the crystal teleported her. And I kind of
Okay.
built off of that, and I said, what if there are other crystals with other powers? What kind of effects do these crystals have? What are like the drawbacks from using them? And the magic system kind of built itself as I wrote. And then I've had to do so much editing to make sure it's consistent. But yeah, it's just, and it's changed as I've gone along. I've done like 5 edits, revisions. And so I've
Mhm.
changed little aspects of it until it's the way I want. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. So, has there ever been a time through this journey where you just were like, "This is too much work. I'm done. I want to give up."
Yeah. I think a year after I started it, I got stuck. I was like 100, maybe 200 pages into it, and I was like, I've got no idea where to go from here. So I just kind of like
Hmm.
stopped for a little while, and then I had friends, people who'd been like beta reading for me. They're like, "Hey, we want the rest of the story." So I decided to rewrite the entire thing. And I changed some major plot points, and that really helped me move forward. And I ended up finishing my first draft, and then I've just been revising it since then.
So we've had a couple of different authors we've talked to who've talked about getting feedback and being involved in writers groups, and the importance of keeping hold of or ownership of your own story, rather than letting this committee of writers groups and feedback and everything change the story for you. But it sounds like in your situation, the feedback is what helped keep you going and kept the inspiration flowing. Is that
Somewhat.
is that accurate?
I'm very much like a performer, so when I have an audience that is actively engaged with me, it really motivates me to keep going. But at the same time, I very quickly learned how to say no to suggestions, which I think a lot of authors can't do. When I've seen like my friends write, if I give any suggestion, a lot of them will just be like, "Okay, I'm okay with that. Let's change that." And I'm like, "Wait, this is your story. I don't want to be too involved." Um, so I think it's a matter of knowing your boundaries for like your creative boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what suggestions to accept and which to just brush over and say, that was a good idea, but I want to go a different direction with this.
Wow, that skill is a skill that most adults don't have. The ability to like say no or thank you for the feedback, but I know what I want or where I'm going. Like, that's impressive. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been difficult, especially with like adults critiquing my stuff, because I'm like, you're an adult, you should know more than me, but I want to go this other way. So it's definitely something I've had to learn. Um,
Uh-huh.
in some of my like rewrites and edits and stuff, I've definitely changed stuff back to the way they were before I had people edit, just because I want to stick with my story instead of letting people get too involved. But I also really love the support from beta readers and friends who just want to get involved. And yeah.
Yeah. We've had some we had one author who's also a teacher, and one of the things we talked about in regards to keeping her books clean was that the kids at school hear and see stuff every day that's worse than anything you could see. And maybe your experience is different because you're in a homeschool environment where you get to choose the people that you're around more than someone could in a traditional school. But did you ever feel pressure to add content to your book that you weren't comfortable with, that you would consider is not so clean?
Um, Not really, because as you said, like I'm homeschooled, I can kind of choose who surrounds me. But it was kind of a culture shock when I did theater in middle school, and just like walking
Mm-hmm.
through the halls of the middle school to get to the class was like, oh my gosh, what is going on around me? Um, so I think, um, honestly, just like life, um, when you're writing, you want to write something that feels real. And when I
Mm-hmm.
started writing, I was in middle school and I was having all of like this language thrown at me from all sides. And so like I'd be writing and I'd get to a point and I'd be like, wait, don't say that, scratch that, change the word. Um, and it was just really interesting to write when I was in like such a toxic environment and trying to keep my writing clean.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes it sounds like what you're saying is that sometimes maybe the bad word or the unclean way, however you want to phrase it, was kind of the easy solution, the one that kind of came out first, and you had to stop yourself and say, no, this is not what I want. Um, and that's another, I guess, I don't know, Brock, if you'd agree, but kind of another realization or thing that's coming out of these interviews in this podcast is that um, sometimes using the cuss words is the kind of the easy way out, where you have to work harder to say what you want to say in a clean way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were describing that, Evelyn, is that sometimes it takes more effort to describe something in a clean way, but as you just said, and I think this is a great point, oftentimes it's more true to who you are, who you want to be, and the choices that you've made, right? And so my question, I guess, to that would be, does the fact that it's more true to you help overcome maybe some of that difficulty of not just throwing words on a page just because that's the language people use, or the content that's out there?
Yeah, I think like I want to write what I would read. Um, and I used reading a lot as just like a way to escape the world. And so when I see something like that's inappropriate by my standards in a book, I'm like, oh, that just brings me right back to where I was before. I just, yeah. So I want my writing to be a safe space for my readers. Um, and I want it also to be true to my standards and just true to the way I live.
And it sounds like you had a lot of people involved, right, in beta reading or helping give feedback. At any point in time, did any of them suggest, hey, you should probably add some more colorful language or add some more graphic content or anything like that? Or did they just accept what you had written and the feedback was more around plot points, storyline, editing, error correction, so on and so forth?
I didn't really have people pushing like negative content because, again, I'd like chose my audience.
Mhm.
I Yeah, the people I gave my book to beta read, I knew that none of them would suggest any of that stuff. Um, I did have people suggesting more romance, and I'm like, this is not a romance novel. um, but no innuendo or anything. Um,
Yeah.
Sure. And Marcus, that's one of the other things that we've had others mention too, is that, and Evelyn, it sounds like this is what you're doing, is you write to the audience and you write books that you would want to read, and for the people who would want to read that kind of content. And so again, this isn't a judgment on clean or not clean content, but you're writing what feels right to you, what's true to you, and true to those around you that you want reading your books. And that's been another topic that's come up as we've
Yeah.
as we've had these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to where you talked about how reading is an escape for you. I seems like if you're having a hard week, you'd want to spend the whole week just reading Harry Potter.
maybe. Seems like a hard task, though.
Maybe watching the movies
Well
the day
Yeah,
done.
after. I don't
maybe.
know.
Well done.
So, how do you like when you're choosing your own books that you want to read for enjoyment to escape? How do you choose them and figure out what if they have content that you actually want to read? Like, where do you go to figure out if it's an appropriate book for you to read?
I take a lot of suggestions from friends because, as I've been saying, a lot of my friends have my same standards. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can ask for just any book suggestion, or I can go deeper and say I want a book that doesn't have any swearing or doesn't have any innuendo. Violence doesn't really bother me, but it
Yeah.
really bothers some other people. So I think different standards are different for other people. So I try to ask for book suggestions from people who I trust their standards and who have a similar standard level to me.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's an excellent point because that's one of the other questions that we're exploring is what does clean mean? And you're absolutely right. To one person, a certain type of content or level of content doesn't bother them, so they see that that's fine, that's clean. Whereas to someone else, that wouldn't be. So how do we um, let everyone know like what this book has and what like how do we call something clean when we know that it's so subjective and without any kind of I don't know rating system or just process that is across the board that everyone uses because if you have a website here a website there or people here people there all rating stuff it can be very subjective and who do you like how do you know who to trust?
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult like problem in like the whole writing book world, because everyone has different levels of sensitivity. Um,
Hmm.
but I think just if you're looking for book suggestions and you see like a website of clean books, compare just compare the two sources. So like one website with clean books might have like I don't know, Hunger Games, which is really violent. And then another
Hmm.
website with also clean books might have Harry Potter, which is slightly less violent. So just trying to find the books that fit your standards, um, and just gauging it based off of their other suggestions.
Yeah. The A great example of that is yesterday. Brock and I were looking into this a little bit more, and we went to a website and looked up the very popular, the bestseller Fourth Wing, because I know it has some pretty graphic content in it, and we just wanted to look at it, say what do they rate it? Like if I was a parent going to this website to figure out whether my kid, it's okay for them to read this book, what would it say? And they rated it 16 plus. Whereas to me, that book is definitively, objectively, without question, 18 plus, just based on the words used in the book. And so then that calls into question that entire website. If that's 16 plus, what else is rated way too young based on my standards, of course? So now how do I trust them? That's the problem, is how do we find a place where we can trust them to know that just by reading that review, we're okay to read it and we're not going to run into a surprise.
Exactly, which I think that's why it's nice to have friends who are readers because you can get like an actual like in-person review of exactly all of the content that their book suggestion has. Um,
Yeah. And then there's that always the, oh, it's great except for chapter 30. Well, so it's not great, is it?
mhm.
um, so back to your book, have you already done your cover design and your formatting and all that, or is that still in the works?
I've done a basic cover design. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that because of the art. Because I generated the art with AI and then I just did a bunch of edits to it, which a lot of artists for
Hmm.
hire are doing right now. But I would also really like to hire an actual artist. It's just so
Yeah.
difficult to find artists who aren't using AI. Um, so it's like, should I hire an artist who would potentially use AI or should I just use AI and edit it myself? Um,
Right. And that's a big topic right now, is it okay to use AI? Like how much can you use AI? Like major controversy in the art world and in author world. And I don't know, in some respects it feels like someone sitting on a wagon arguing that cars shouldn't be on the road. Like it's
yeah,
happening. So we've got to embrace it. But I think, are there rules or guidelines, or is there an etiquette to using AI that we need to figure out?
yeah, definitely. And that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. Um, because so I launched a Kickstarter to pay for editing and stuff, and that's going on right now. And I'm trying to
Awesome.
decide. I've gone over the goal, and I'm trying to decide with that extra money, should I hire an artist? Should I hire an audiobook narrator? What should I do with that? Um,
Yeah.
so just trying to figure out where to go with that. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And you bring up a really good point too, which is the more independent authors that we have who are trying to get trying to publish or trying to finish their novel, trying to get it edited, trying to get it illustrated, everything you just mentioned. I think that's another reason why AI has to play a part in this, obviously carefully, because it reduces the cost so much, just like it does in every other industry, right? The whole point of leveraging AI is to try to get things done with, less expense, right? And I think especially for the independent authors out there, it could potentially provide a solution, just like you said, Evelyn, of kicking out some cover art, or whatever the case might be, which is a very, very interesting point, and help, because otherwise, to your point, you have to launch a Kickstarter, you have to find some way to get the funds, right, to help subsidize the cost of just getting your book out.
Mm-hmm. And congratulations, by the way, on meeting your goal on Kickstarter. It's actually harder than people think.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. Did you market it outside of the public, or was it mostly friends and family
It
that helped you
was
out?
mostly friends and family. When I researched marketing Kickstarters, the most advice I saw was reach out directly to friends and family, because strangers are like a lot less likely to give you money than people that you are close
Mm-hmm.
to. Um, and then once it gets attention, then that's when it'll start to build and to snowball. So what I did was I made a list of like 100 people I know, and I texted all of them individually, and I said, I'm putting together this Kickstarter. It's my dream to be an author. Would you donate, or would you share this with people you know, or post it on social media? Um, and that ended up getting a lot of attention. And then also with like new authors and stuff, a lot of people on Kickstarter don't really care about the story. They care about the person and the
Mm-hmm.
goal. So instead of trying to really like push my novel on people, I went more for the angle of, hey, I'm a teenage author. This is my dream to be published. I have a deadline because I'm turning 18 in a couple months. Help me out. And I think that really played to my advantage, because another thing I saw when I was researching Kickstarter is that Kickstarter will do a thing called Projects We Love, where they will feature your project. And
Yeah.
online, all the research I did, they were like, okay, you have to reach out to the Kickstarter team months in advance, and then you might have a chance if anyone is interested. I did not put my Kickstarter together months in advance. I put it together in like 2 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't end up reaching out to anyone on like the Kickstarter team, but 2 days after I launched, I was featured as one of the projects we love. So I think it's a matter of being more personal, because a lot of people are just trying to sell their product,
Yeah,
instead of build a connection.
that's awesome. Good. Like, yeah, that's amazing. There's so many people that start Kickstarters that go nowhere, that do nothing. So that is amazing. That's congratulations. Very cool. Um, it sounds like, and I don't want to make an assumption, you're planning on self-publishing, is that right?
Yes. I considered going traditional publishing, but then I talked to people about like the timeline of that, and it can take
Mm-hmm.
years for publishing companies to finally cycle through and get to your book, because everyone has a super long waiting list. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if I want to publish as a teenager, I cannot go through a company. So I just
Yeah.
decided it's not going to work, and decided to self-publish.
And you clearly do your research before jumping into things. So is there any part of that self-publishing process that you're most nervous about?
Um, I wouldn't say necessarily nervous, but editing is just going to be a very long and very tedious process. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm in the middle of doing some self edits and stuff, and then in a couple weeks I'll send it off to an editor to get it like actually edited, and then I'll have to go over everything she said. Um, and I think the time crunch is the scariest part on that, because it's a
Yeah.
big book, and I do not have very much time, especially if I want to get it published later this summer or this fall. Other than that, I'd say marketing, because I know absolutely nothing about marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm mostly trying to go at it from like the social media angle, but that's hard because I don't really have a following yet. And I don't really know what I'm doing. So it'll be an adventure.
Do you feel
Yeah.
like you're in line to meet your goal? September, I think, is what you said. Do you feel like that's you're good with where you are, or
I think
you
so. I
need some
think
more help to get there?
if I really push it, I'll have to do a lot of work, a lot of editing. But I think if I'm working on it very consistently this summer, I'll be able to get it. Um, the problem is just getting distracted. I end up procrastinating a lot, so that's not a good thing. But I think it's gonna happen.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, we put that out then to our listeners too. If those who watch our program want to help a teenage author make their goal, then jump in and offer some help. Contact her and see if you can help support her. So
Yeah, and we're excited. And this is going to be a series, right?
Yes, this is gonna be. I'm not sure how long it's gonna be. It's either 3 or 4 books. We'll see where the plot takes me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, sometimes it's the characters who dictate how long it's going to be and
Definitely.
not the author.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. So do you have any recommendations for our listeners of some clean authors that you would recommend?
I really like Brandon Mull. Brandon Mull is fantastic for fantasy and especially like YA and middle grade. I don't know if he does anything else
Mm-hmm.
besides that. Anyway, I love Brandon Mull. Um,
And is that Moll?
Mull.
ULL, okay.
Um,
So Brandon Mull.
then Shannon Messenger is good. She did Keeper of the Lost Cities series.
Okay.
And I think there's a little bit of language and they can be violent, but it's a good middle grade series. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, I think those are my 2 biggest suggestions.
Okay, great. Those are suggestions that we haven't had before, so we're building our list of recommendations, which is awesome. Maybe we should start putting those names on the website in a list so that people can keep track of those.
That would be awesome.
That'd be a good
absolutely.
idea. Yeah. All right. So anything else that you would like to say? You've got this platform right now that you would like to say to other teenagers out there who have a story but just don't know what to do.
I would say just push forward, set a solid goal. One of the things that I really struggled with is that my book, I got very stuck last year because I had edited it multiple times. I was like, okay, I'm ready to publish, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't set a specific enough goal to press forward. Also, like, don't be afraid to ask for help because at
Yeah.
that same point in time, like, I was just stuck. I didn't know where I was going with it. I didn't know what I was doing. And then this year, I talked to my parents. I'm like, hey, I'm very serious about getting this published, but I don't know what I'm doing. Help me out. And that's when it finally got rolling, and that's where I'm at now. So yeah.
Great advice. Great advice. Setting your goals and then knowing what you want. So when you go and ask for help, you are specific about it. You're saying, I need help to do this instead of just help me.
Mhm.
You know, that it's, as a parent, it's really difficult when your kids come to you and just say, help me. It's much easier if they say, help me with this, or this is where I'm struggling. And then we can figure it out. We can work together. We can research it together. We can figure it out together. So I think that's great. All right. So I don't know. I don't know if you gave anything away.
Not
So
much. She was
we're gonna have to
pretty.
go back.
She dodged, but if we're ready for that, I have
You have some
some
ideas?
thoughts up my sleeve here. Yeah. So if we go to the 2 truths and a lie, I also did a little snooping ahead of time, right? So as we try to research our authors a little bit with the resources they give us, and you've got a great YouTube channel with a lot of a lot of videos on it. And I will say, so from a deductive reasoning standpoint, I did see a video clip on there of you playing the violin and other instruments. You also mentioned it in your bio. So I'm going to say that playing the violin for a video game soundtrack is legitimate. That's a truth. And on your YouTube channel, you have multiple videos with Harry Potter references and factoids and things like that. So, and you've mentioned it a couple times here on our during our discussion. So I'm going to say that that's very possible that you ran that marathon full bore. So I'm gonna go with the Chuck Norris. I'm gonna say that's the lie. But I'll let Marcus you jump in on that.
Yeah. So my family, every New Year's, we do a movie marathon. And this past year was Harry Potter. And it's tough to get through that many movies in one sitting. And so I can see you reading the books in a week, but I don't know, watching all the movies in one day is tough. Even though I know you love Harry Potter so I'm going to go that the lie is the Harry Potter marathon because of watching all the movies the day after.
Well, Marcus, you are correct. I read all the Harry Potter books in a week. I did not watch all of the movies in a day. Just reading them in a week, that was wild. That took so much time because those books get big.
Yeah.
And then as for playing violin for a video game, my dad actually composes music for video games. And so every so often he'll just be like, hey, I've got a violin part, come record it. I'm like, okay.
Cool.
That's so cool.
Chuck Norris, I was at Comic-Con last year and he was there, and I did not want to wait in line for 2 hours to get a thing signed by him. So I just kind of like snuck up kind of above-ish him, and I just waved very dramatically until I got his attention and he waved back, and now I have that one in my pocket for 2 truths and a lie.
There you go.
I love it. Well, you fooled me, so that's awesome.
So that makes it 3-2.
I believe it does.
I've got a scoreboard here, so I can keep track. That's great. Yeah. So we actually tried the James Bond marathon one time, and that took like 4 years, 4 New Years. So movie marathons are no joke. Like sitting down on a couch that long to watch movies, that's no joke. That takes some
even
dedication.
as a hardcore fan, it'll wear you out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us, Evelyn. It was a great conversation. We learned a lot. Congratulations for the book and for all of your success. And we wish you every success in the future. We're excited for your release this September. So keep us updated when the release comes out. And everyone, please subscribe. Please follow the podcast so that you can meet and listen to more amazing authors. And we will catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.